Fun with Failure.
Hi, my name is Dallas with Fun with Failure. Just to let you guys know, I'm feeling a little bit different today. We have 6 life-altering stories for you today. Let's cut them in, chatter, and here we go. This happened when I was still in college. I was a delivery tech for a home health company. My job was to deliver and set up hospital beds, medical oxygen, CPAP machines, wheelchairs, diabetic strips, and other equipment, mostly to the elderly coming out of some sort of rehab. It was a decent job for a quiet town. The company truck that I drove was a V6 Ford Ranger. I can't remember the year. Well, I went through the phase that I was a bit obsessed with increasing intake airflow to boost engine performance. I had just recently put a cold air intake into my Grand Prix. God rest its soul. And I basically felt that I was an expert in the matter. I had this thought: what if I increase the O2 flow through the intake with medical oxygen? Interestingly, I didn't imagine doing it to my car, but to the company car instead. After all, I spent way more time driving that thing than my own car. It would be easy enough. I have the O2 container in the cab, and I would run the tubing from it through the dash and under the hood to the intake manifold. I fantasized about what it would be like driving down the road on my way to deliver some diabetic test strips when some frat guy decides to pass me, and I engage the secret weapon of redneck nos. Not today, sucker! So, one boring day at the office, when there's no deliveries and I was basically just sitting around, I cooked up an experiment. My mission: to enrich intake airflow with medical oxygen feed to drastically increase the available power and awesomeness. Stage 1. Integrate medical oxygen feed into intake manifold. Medical oxygen tanks are obviously pressurized and have removable regulators that allow you to control the flow of oxygen. After all, you don't want to blow up the old people's faces with pure oxygen fury. I took some of the tubing that connected the regulator to the nose piece and put that into the intake manifold of the truck. I cranked the truck and started the oxygen flow. Step 2. Experiment with increasing levels of oxygen flow. There really wasn't a discernible difference with the oxygen. Looking back, I'm not really sure what I expected, since I wasn't actually driving the thing. It was just sitting idle in the parking lot. I decided to adjust the regulator to increase the oxygen and see what happened. Again, nothing. It was time to kick things up a notch. Step 3. Dramatically increase oxygen flow by removing regulator. I removed the regulator from the tank and I reran the line. Direct, uninterrupted linkage between intake and tank. The engine was still running when I opened the tank valve. I braced myself for the furious rev, but the engine stopped. Whatever I did interrupted the combustion process in the engine, and it died. At this point, I was a bit nervous. I wasn't really sure what I had done, and if it caused any permanent damage. I started to have a sense that this really wasn't a good idea. It was time to roll things back. Stage 4. Rollback. I turned off the oxygen and pulled the line out of the intake manifold. Again, I was a bit worried about the truck, so I decided, hey, let's try cranking the engine again. To reassure myself that nothing was permanently damaged, I hopped in the cab and I turned the key. Step 5. Crap myself. There was a huge boom that shook the entire truck. Pieces of plastic went flying out of the hood. My ears were ringing. This was freaking Black Hawk Down. The pharmacy techs in the building came running out. They thought that a transformer had exploded. I took a look under the hood. The entire intake manifold had blown wide open. The pieces I saw flying had obviously belonged to it. Apparently, the excess oxygen in the manifold created a larger combustion than it was designed for. Imagine that. My boss eventually found out. He walked outside silently and took a look at the damage, and he returned with an unblinking stare, hand over mouth, obviously expecting an explanation. I explained everything to him, my thought process, my dreams of awesomeness, of faster delivery time, my stupidity, and the ultimate result. I was pretty sure he was going to fire me. Step 6. Redemption. Apparently my boss thought it was amusing to see my wide-eyed terror in what I had just done. He didn't even think to punish me. The truck had been towed off to the mechanic and the repair was like $600. Not bad considering what could have happened. I insisted on paying for it, but he just shrugged it off. I think he figured I've already learned my lesson. Perhaps the fact that I was the only reliable driver at the time probably helped. Whatever the case, to this day, I'm thankful that he showed me a bit of mercy. Here's a disclaimer. Looking back, and after having a little bit more exposure to working on vehicles, I can see why this was a terrible idea, and that it wouldn't have worked anyway. There are multiple systems that regulate and optimize air-fuel mix, and bypassing these systems and adding pure oxygen to the mix is just stupid and dangerous. This happened yesterday. I work at a retail store that sells office supplies, including printers. I was working at the checkout when a lady came up. She told me that she had a printer on hold. It was a Brother MFC 9335. It was extremely heavy. So I went back to the back where we was keeping it held. I carried that huge printer down to the checkout where she was waiting patiently. Because I'm a nice person, and also because I had to, I offered her a hand carrying it to her car. She was relieved, and she gladly accepted my offer. So I went back and got the trolley, and put the printer on it. And I wheeled it back down to the exit where I went down to follow her to her car. I assumed that she would be parked just outside the store, but she didn't. She parked on the bottom level of the car park on the other end of the shopping center. Now, employees aren't supposed to go that far. We have to ask the customer to drive up to the car park outside the store. But this was my first week working here, so I wasn't aware of that. We made our way to the elevator and she pressed the button to go down. As we were waiting for the elevator to reach the level we were waiting on, she asked me if I had done modeling before. Me, being an overconfident 16-year-old Caucasian male, quickly replied with, "No, but I bet you have." She gave me a short giggle and I thought I was super smooth. She then told me that she was an agent and she was looking for someone who looked like me, and she gave me her business card, which I was pretty stoked about. She followed me to the elevator and I pushed the trolley in. She pressed the button to the lowest level of the car park and we went down. I don't exactly remember how our conversation went, but on the way down, it was mostly subtle flirting. At least I think it was. Once we reached the bottom level and exited the elevator, she said, "Well, I think we're on the wrong level." So I pushed the trolley back into the elevator and held it open, so it wouldn't close. Big mistake. She had to call her grandmother to figure out where she parked. Their confusing conversation went on for a long time. So I whipped out my phone and I was scrolling through Reddit. All the while my hand was still holding the elevator door open. And then it starts to close. How was I supposed to know that it had a time limit? I kept waving my arms between the sliding doors to make it open again. But alas, it shut, with the $400 printer inside the elevator. I panicked, and I bolted for the fire escape. I ran up what seemed to be a 100 flight of stairs. I eventually burst through one of the fire doors about halfway, which tripped the fire alarm. Ah, crap. I spammed both elevator buttons, and to my luck, the doors opened with the printer and the trolley, just where I left them. I entered the elevator and I pressed the down button, but the doors weren't shutting. The stinking fire alarm stopped the elevator from running. The next part was a blur. I pulled the trolley out of the elevators and I ran it back to the fire escape doors to carry it down the flight of stairs. Once I was inside the fire escape room, I could hear multiple voices bouncing off the concrete walls. I proceeded to carry the printer down as fast as I could. I bumped into 2 security guards that were running up the stairs from the mall's security room. It happened to be on the floor right below me. I explained to them what happened, and they helped me carry the printer down. They must have spoken to someone in the console room through their microphone because the alarm stopped. I don't really remember anyone talking, which is odd. We found the lady right where I left her, and I kid you not, my grandmother pulled up in her Forester. Turns out this agent that I've been flirting with was actually my cousin from New Zealand, which I never even knew existed. My grandparents regularly go to New Zealand because we have other family there, but I've never met them. My cousin's dog was in the car, so I got to pet it, so I guess it turned out fine in the end. My boss forgave me, and so did the shopping center staff. I didn't get fired from my new job. That's good. It has been an extremely long day, the kind that deserves an epic bubble bath at the end. So of course, that's what I did. Now, as this is a particularly stressful day, full of broken cars and the likes, I don't want the typical rush bubble bath. I need the super awesome Lavish Me Home Spa edition. I grabbed the bin full of all my bath goodies. You know, the one filled with gifts from coworkers and acquaintances from Christmas that you never really use. That's the one. I decided to skip the whole reasonable, methodical bath creation, and I added a little of this and a whole bottle of that, and threw in a ton of Epsom salt for good measure, and I started the water hot. Again, I wanted the full experience. So while the tub filled, I rounded up every freaking candle in the house. I covered all the bathroom surfaces with them, until I was able to compete against the Aggies with my bonfire, and then out went the lights. Finally undressed, I slipped into the tub and shut the water off. That's the stuff. I stuck my foot up on the edge of the tub. Of course, I knocked the shampoo into the tub with me. No problem. At this point, I'm exhausted, and I'm just taking in the noxious lavender menthol juniper concoction. I leaned my head back to the edge. Something else fell into the tub next to my hip and my back. No worries. I'm not moving from this spot for anything. And I nod off. I wake up to my phone ringing. I shift over to reach it on the floor to turn it off. I shift back into place. Rings again. I shift over to put it on silent. Shift back over. Suddenly I feel a sharp sting across my butt. And then I feel hellfire. I'm panicking at the suddenness of this searing pain. And I try to quickly leap from the tub, only to slip and come crashing down onto the shower curtain, pulling the bar down both with me and a half-dozen candles, smacking me on top of the head and my butt still raging on. I reach for the light switch and step on a piece of glass, sending me into a total meltdown between my head, foot, and butt. With the lights turned on, I turn back to look at my bum in the mirror. There is a tear. Through my tears, I see that I'm bleeding from gashes on both cheeks. I turn to look, and lo and behold, laying at the bottom of the bathtub, it's my razor. Apparently, it was the little lovely that I carelessly knocked behind me. Then while waking and moving to look for my phone, I wiggled onto it, slicing my poor cheeks open, exposing my nerves to the wonderful world of Epsom salt water. Like any reasonable human, all I want to do is sit down on the floor and cry for a bit, only that hurt way too much. I took a quick survey. My shower curtain was torn from most of the hooks. I can't get the shower bar to have enough tension to stay up now. My bathroom rug is full of glass and wax. It's probably best to just throw it all out. Oh, and the candles? Yeah, unfortunately, they didn't survive the ordeal. I guess I need to get another trip to Bath & Body Works, right? Ugh, too soon. It's been an hour now, and I'm standing at my kitchen island, here with Reddit. A giant band-aid on my foot, an ice pack on my head, and saran-wrapped bag of frozen peas strapped to my butt. The interwebs say I probably don't need stitches, but it stings like crazy and it won't stop bleeding. Even if it did need stitches, that would mean waking someone up to take me to get them, since my freaking car is dead. And I really don't want to have to explain why I have giant cuts across my bum to anyone in the middle of the night. To heck with cleaning the bathroom tonight. I'm going to have to blasting replace everything I wrecked. And forget sitting down. The best part in all of this, I'm supposed to go car shopping and test drive tomorrow. Yeah, sitting, sliding into a car, huge cuts across my butt, sounds delightful. Along with a huge knot on my head, and a cut across my driving foot. Not gonna be a thing. If for some reason I don't make it through the night, I'm pretty sure the bathroom's gonna make an epic unsolved mystery murder case. This didn't happen today, but it was when I was in middle school and over the course of about 2 months. I was at a table in my homeroom, talking to 2 girls. One of them said that I was intimidating, and the other one laughed. I turned to her and said something along the lines of, "What? I can be intimidating if I want to." I was very small in stature, and she was quick to point this out. At this point I responded that if I wanted to, I could intimidate them. I can do it psychologically rather than physically. There was more random arguing at this point, and we agreed that if I would attempt to intimidate a friend of ours named Zach, because he's really down to earth, so it wouldn't be easy. He is also the least likely of our friends to talk to any adults if the situation got too out of hand. In hindsight, this line of conversation was probably just a sarcastic joke. But I took it very seriously, and I spent a couple of weeks following him around taking pictures when he wasn't looking, figuring out his locker combo, lunch number, etc., in order to slip him some pictures or account information to make him feel like he was being watched and that no part of his life would be kept a secret. I wanted to get a picture of him during class from an angle that seemed like it was taken from the outside. So I sat next to the window one day and I tried to take the picture of him and to make it look like I was taking a picture from outside. One of the girls sitting next to him, we will call her Jane, saw and thought I was taking a picture of her. She approached me about it and I assured her that it was something for the yearbook. Later, when I was testing out Zach's locker combo, another guy, we'll call him John, saw me open it up and asked how I managed to open it. At the time, I make up some outrageous lie that I thought nobody would believe. So I told him that some random dude was paying me to collect some information on random students. Of course, it was so ridiculous that they didn't believe me. But later, while John and Jane were talking, John told her about what had happened, and Jane suddenly remembered the time when I was taking a picture of her. They told a third friend about it, one that was known to be dramatic, and she freaked out, and she told her entire friends group. Young, stupid me was sitting there thinking, psh, and they thought I couldn't be intimidating. This is when I thought I had a bright idea of trying to figure out how to scare them all. The problem was that Zach didn't know what I was doing, but now they were all spooked and being especially careful about not giving any information away, or they was watching for phone cameras. So I figured I'd have to scare them a different way. I went home, wrote a fake letter, and put some random files on a USB, and collected a bunch of cash that I had saved away. I ironed it to make it look like it was something freshly pressed, and then put it all in a manila envelope and taped it to the underside of my desk of one of my classrooms. Later, I pulled it out in front of one of my friends that really liked action movies, thinking that he would probably be the easiest person to convince that this was really happening. He freaked out, and he promptly told the rest of the friend group. So that day during lunch recess, my friend held sort of an intervention just to say, dude, this isn't cool. You shouldn't sell our information. At which point I basically did the equivalent of saying, oops, too late, and pulled out the cash from the envelope. That day, they tried to tell a couple of teachers about it, but they all shrugged it off because it all sounded so ridiculous. And I was generally a pretty good kid. At night when they all went home, they told their parents, who called the principal, who called my parents, and asked to talk to me. She said there was this ridiculous sounding rumor going around that I was selling kids' information to someone. I told her I wasn't doing anything of the sort, and she left it at that because she knew that I wasn't a bad kid. Later though, one of my friends found the envelope in the letter that I had thrown away in the trash. She picked it out, showed it to one of the teachers as proof. The teacher showed it to the principal, and the whole school went on total lockdown, with SWAT teams and news reporters, the whole 9 yards. When they found out it was just some BS that I made up, they were so embarrassed that they covered it up. But they still made me make a formal apology to everyone involved. At the end of the year, students were handed a teacher evaluation form that we get handed each year, and there was a section that asked if they felt safe with the teachers being evaluated. Even though nothing really bad happened, the teachers that had shrugged off the situation, they got really bad ratings, and they were encouraged to resign. Quick backstory. On a previous incident, I had a swig of water from my bedside glass. I thought, what the heck's in my water? Because I felt something chunky in my mouth. I spat it out. All of a sudden, intense pain in my gum, tongue, and lips hit me. I looked at what I spat out. It was a wasp. So anyway, tonight I sat playing my Xbox, and all of a sudden, I see a big wasp crawling across my lap. It seemed pretty docile. I think they must be dying or something. Instead of being calm, I stand up to go outside to get rid of it. I grabbed the Xbox controller and I walloped that wasp, which was on my groin. Did you know that wasps can sting through denim and underpants? Well, I found out. They sting right through. An hour later, it still hurts. Right on the man place. Luckily, the hitting of the controller only hit the pillar and not the stones. This happened back in 2005. At the time, I was a young man, just out of college. Had my first real job. In the company, was having a family day at the water park. The water park wasn't huge, It just had several slides, and one of those slides was about 50 to 70 feet high. You laid back on your back and slide almost straight down until you're near the bottom, where it starts to flatten out. We had been there a while, and I've been down the slide several times. As I prepared to ride it once more, I follow a group of girls about 12 years old, and another group of boys roughly the same age. We make it to the flight of stairs, and the boys watch the girls all go down the slide. The boys are next. The first one takes his turn. The second boy, he decides he isn't up for the challenge. I'm watching his friends try to convince him, and I decide to step in. I block his path down the steps. You see, I made a similar mistake at a local high dive when I was about his age, so I decided I'd try to help save him from the shame I experienced years ago. I tell him, I can't let you go down. The girls just went down the slide ahead of you. Do you really want those girls to see you walk down the steps? No, he says in shame. I tell him I've already been down half a dozen times. You can do this. His buddies are chiming in. He caves in with a sudden burst of confidence. At this point, I'm feeling pretty good about myself. I just saved a kid from total shame, I thought. Apparently, he didn't listen to the instructions that the guy was trying to give him. He gets on the slide. I'm watching from the next level down. There was trouble right off the bat. As most of you know, you're supposed to go down the slide on your back with your feet first, arms and legs crossed. He didn't cross his arms and legs. By the time he dropped 10 feet, he rolled over on his belly. Now he was sliding down feet first upside down. He slides 10 more feet. He twists around where he's now perpendicular with his arms and legs thrashing wildly. He's screaming and terrified. Staff at the bottom see him and start running toward him. At this point, I genuinely think he's gonna fly off the slide. People are staring in horror. And my brother, typically, he's laughing his butt off near the bottom. So in an effort to try to save a kid from shame, I almost got him killed. Well, if you like that, please give it a big thumbs up. And if you have a story you'd like to share, send it to the email that's in the description below. And thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Man, I look good. Oop, gotta go.